Hey everyone, today we're going to be talking about ancient animal myths, or as I wanted to call it, medieval animal myths, but then I realised that they're not all medieval myths. You might be able to hear Brooke renovating in the background, that's just fine, let her get on with it, she's in her cardboard box. So I'm going to pick 5 animals, and Kevin's picked another 5, although actually I've got 4 and then a little collection of animals.
I've got 4 as well.
Oh, you've got 4. Well,
so Fly's picked 4 animals, I've picked 4 animals.
Technically,
and a collection of animals. Sounds like a zoo.
I've got 4 plus a collection of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So I've got 9 animals, but 5 of them is just like a tiny line about the myths that surrounded them. And it's not exhaustive by any means. There's a lot more, but originally I'd wanted to talk about behavioural myths, and I'm going to give an example. This is one of the 9. So nightjars were once believed to latch. Nightjars were once believed to latch onto goats and drink their milk, and so they were given the nickname goat suckers. And I thought this was a really funny, strange myth, and so I wanted the podcast episode to be about weird myths like that. But a lot of them ended up being more symbolic than behavioural, so there's a lot of symbolic myths in there as well. And it was weird because some of them were really easy to find myths for, and others were quite hard. So I'm sure there's a lot more. Oh, not I'm sure. There definitely is a lot more for every single species when it comes to the myths that surround them, because every country and every sort of era in time had different myths surrounding them.
So hold on. What does that mean then? That a lack of nightjars are now due to a lack of goat farmers?
Well, I thought it was a myth, but maybe it's not.
Maybe it's not. Maybe we're onto something here. RSPB, check this out.
Have a look on YouTube and see if you can find any footage of nightjars.
Yes. BTO, research study into nightjars latching onto goat nipples.
I don't know where that myth actually came from. I just heard about it a while ago. I think it was months ago I heard of it, and that's what made me originally want to do this episode, and then I couldn't find many more myths like it in terms of weird behaviours by animals. But we only looked at, in inverted commas, 4 each. Anyway, let's talk wildlife. Right, so I've done nightjars. I'll just do my other 4 really mini ones, if that's okay, and then we can go between the main 4.
Yeah, go for it.
Okay, so lynx. It was believed once that the urine of a lynx becomes stone when it comes into contact with air.
That would explain the mountain area they live in then.
That's what I was thinking. Oh, it's very rocky, so that must have been lynx that drank a lot of water. Like the massive boulders.
You know, I've heard of was it the stones you get in your bladder? That's taken it to a whole new level.
What, like?
Urinated mountains.
What?
If their urine turns in, when it touches air, turns into rocks, if he has a favourite spot he likes to urinate on to mark his territory...
Wouldn't that just become a big gravel pile? Like the gravel piles you see like dumped on the side of the road, maybe that's where lynx are or were.
Tracking 101.
It's like
that you have a lynx in your country.
Lynx that people don't know about. Maybe that's why people don't want to reintroduce the lynx, because they're just sick of all these gravel piles building up everywhere.
Hey, I'm surely there's people who would benefit from using all their gravel.
Yeah, they could offset the costs of releasing them and any problems that might cause by selling the gravel, because gravel's quite expensive, isn't it?
I don't know.
I think
I've never
is.
brought any gravel before.
Shipping costs must be expensive because you need a lorry.
Surely it'd be cheaper to ship the lynx.
Yeah, but that's animal exploitation.
I know, but we put them in first class in Virgin Airways or any other airways that you wish to use.
Yeah, but you'd have to keep in quite a tight area, in an enclosure, because you'd want the gravel to be where you wanted it. And plus it would take years for that pile of gravel to, form. So it would definitely not be fair on the lynx. You just have to let the lynx run free.
So you have an in-depth knowledge of
but if you think of the
lynx.
the volume would only become a tiny pile of gravel, so it would take years to become a big enough pile of gravel for someone to actually use.
Well, listeners,
so you need to allow the lynx to live wild, and then you just have to get people to collect it.
Well, listeners, I never knew Flo knew so much about the urination process of a lynx.
It's more just understanding how it would work in society and how humans could benefit without having any negative impact on the lynx. Anyway, foxes are the next one. So according to a 7th century bishop, they're incapable of running in a straight line, only circles. And I feel like real behaviour backs this up a little bit, in the sense that when they're hunted, they run in a really wide circle and then they tend to break off in that circle. But I'm not sure if the bishop meant that they only run in tight circles. Although I wouldn't expect that would be the case, because surely anyone who's seen a fox would know that it's not running in a tight circle. So maybe it was meaning a really, really wide circle.
But then some foxes run in straight lines. So.
Yeah, but maybe that's a really wide circle. Like maybe it's only 1 degree to the left or the right, so that if it ran for miles, it would eventually be a circle. But I wonder if it meant a perfect circle or just a loop, because surely if they've got a territory, they are eventually going to come back to where they came from. If you know what I mean.
Maybe they've got toxoplasmosis, so they can't run straight because they're not
Is that a
thinking right.
symptom of toxoplasmosis?
I don't know. Tilty head isn't it?
Yeah, well, I mean, general neurological issues, so maybe that's correct. So panthers, a 13th century Middle English manuscript, suggests that panthers are gentle and have a sweet smell to them, but they also feed on the enemy, which is the dragon. So if you've got any dragon problems, you introduce a sweet-smelling panther.
Does it mean it'll gently, sweet-smellingly attack the dragon?
Maybe it's sort of like the nice smell kind of makes the dragon fall asleep, like a kind of, what's it called? Aromatherapy. An aromatherapeutic panther.
Wow. You heard it here first. Talk Wildlife Podcasts.
Aromatherapeutic panthers. The last one is bats. And I think there's a lot more myths surrounding bats. And I feel like I say this with every single episode, but we'll probably be able to do more than one episode on this topic. It's just because there's so many animals out there. Bats were seen as a strange type of bird. They were blind, although they're not, but they were considered to be blind, and dark in colour, because the bat stole fire and was singed and blinded by its smoke. And I haven't really written down the ears of these beliefs. I think because I wasn't sure if I was just going to get one myth or if I was going to get loads of myths from different periods in time. So I didn't really look at... I mean, I said 13th century Middle English manuscript for the panther, but for a lot of the animals here, I didn't actually say who believed it or when it was believed. I just mentioned the belief. I think the more interesting thing is just that this was ever believed. And some of them are more literal than others. For example, people, I guess, did believe that nightjars fed on goat's milk, but some of them are more kind of metaphors when it comes to myth. Like, I don't know if anyone actually thinks that every bat that exists stole fire. I think that's more like kind of legend, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
So it's kind of... The original point of this episode has maybe been changed a little bit, but it's because it was hard to find literal myths like the nightjar one. A lot harder than I thought it would be. But anyway, that's the last of the mini ones. So do you want to start with your one?
Yeah, okay, so the first one I want to go on is going to be the good old humble rat. So rats were lauded for their strong teeth. And when a child, this is an old belief, when a child lost their baby teeth, the parents were instructed to leave these baby teeth, beside a rat hole and ask the rat to take the tooth and to send a strong tooth to replace it. So they believed, and I don't know whether this was practiced or where this belief come from, but it's a very old belief. I don't even know exactly where it came from. But imagine like believing taking your child's baby tooth and giving it to a rat. Rat probably wouldn't enjoy taking it, to be honest.
But the strange thing about that is that you don't put a tooth in your mouth, a new one grows in. So why would they want a rat to put an adult tooth, like to return? Why would they want a rat to return an adult tooth to you? What do you do with that tooth? Just like glue it into the child's gums?
We don't know what they did back in the day.
I don't know what the logic is in that.
I don't know either, but there's a couple of other ones here.
Okay.
And these ones that you actually found. In ancient Greece and Rome, a group of rats was a symbol of bounty, signifying joy and plenty. The logic was that rats were attracted to ample food, so a group would only flock to areas with nibbles to spare.
Nibbles to spare.
Well, that makes sense though, you know. If there's lots of food about, there'll be lots of rats. It's something I say all the time. If you've got rats in the garden, you don't want them there, you've got to take away the food source. So if you don't show the rats you have a bounty of food, you won't have a bounty of rats bouncing around your garden.
I was looking at myths regarding rats and symbolism, and I was really surprised to find that ancient symbolism when it comes to rats was all really positive. They were seen as really good and friendly and helpful, and I didn't expect that because these days they're very negative when it comes to symbolism for most people.
Well, there's another one as well, talking about a positive story. In some Indian mythology, rats have been portrayed as being helpful towards people. And the way with this is rats could gnaw through anywhere, and they would often be heroic. See, again, a positive thing about rats, be heroic gnawing people and other animals out of bad situations.
So if someone was trapped, then the rat might come and help them.
Yeah, the rat would literally gnaw their way to them or a way for them to get out of a bad situation.
Oh, that's cute. I feel like it would take a lot of rats to make a hole big enough for a human to escape.
It's really weird because if you look at like UK perception of rats and probably American perception of rats, it's all really bad and negative. Even like the old folk stories are really, really bad. Don't mind it's like the Pied Piper. I was reading that story, and like the rats ain't really the bad one. It's the Pied Piper because he takes the children and disappears off into a mountain cave with all the children because they didn't pay him. So the rats were also the victim as well as the children.
Wait, what did the Pied Piper have to do with rats again?
He played his pipe and led all the rats from the town into from the German town into the river and drowned them all. And then the mayor wouldn't pay the Pied Piper for clearing the town of rats. So he did the same and took all the children away.
So he's one of the early lethal pest controllers. I don't like him, if that's what he did.
No, me neither.
Is that you done with rats?
That is me done with
I'm
rats.
not done with rats.
No, I've never been done with rats. That's just a small fragment of the lowdown of rats.
The lowdown. Okay, so I found out a bit about swallows from quite a few different sources. So swallows had been associated with the gods and also the souls of the dead. So in ancient Greece, the swallow was associated with Aphrodite, the goddess of love. And swallows were believed to bring good luck and happiness. The genus which swallows belong to, which is Progny, I think I said that right, Progny, the word Progny, which is the genus swallows belong to, descends from the word Procne, which is a name. And Procne was the name of a daughter of one of the kings of Athens in Greek mythology. And it tells a gruesome story which results basically in her being turned into a swallow. So the word Procne actually descends from that story. And people used to believe that the presence of swallows protected farm animals from diseases and curses, and also buildings from fires. So they had a lot of positive symbolism surrounding them. Because people didn't used to see swallows in winter in the UK, for example, and before they all disappeared, they'd be seen collecting in their hundreds or their thousands, often near bodies of water. It was believed that they used to spend all their winter either at the bottom of lakes under an ice sheet, or in mud. So people thought that they just spent their winter at the bottom of the water or hidden in mud for the whole of winter, and then they came back up from the mud or back up from the water in spring, rather than going to Africa, because they didn't know in those days that they were going all the way to Africa. And up until the 1960s, in the north of England, apparently, it was believed that killing a swallow would lead to cows producing bloody milk or producing no milk at all. So it was a bad omen to kill a swallow, and they're meant to be beneficial when alive to how your sort of farm was doing when it comes to the health of your animals, and it was negative when one died to the health of your production when it comes to your farm animals.
The irony of that is due to modern farming practices, insects in the countryside are being obliterated, and there's no food for a lot of the swallows, and their numbers are going to probably be declining if they ever do another census of swallow numbers. So I wonder if that's going to affect their beliefs will crop back up again, that there's going to be blood in the milk, or they're not going to produce any milk at all.
What's your next animal?
Ooh, my next one is going to be Fantastic Fox. So, due to how foxes can move silently and appear and vanish as if by magic, led them in early Mesopotamian mythology to be seen as a messenger of the goddess, no, I don't know if I get this right, Ninhursag. Now this proposed ability seemed them to be called cunning and sneaky, and like you can be in the countryside and there'll be a fox that can go right past you and you won't even hear it, see it coming. I've seen it numerous times. Out of nowhere there's a fox and suddenly it's gone again. And like even in urban areas, you know, you've seen these videos of people walking down an urban street at night and a fox comes out of nowhere and disappears as quick as it comes. And there is something kind of magical about them. And it's obviously not real magic, it's just excellent at keeping quiet and moving around.
I don't think you can say it's not real magic, because you don't know that. Maybe it is.
Well, I've not found one in the spell books yet, so the day I do, then I'll believe in fox magic.
Just because humans rely on spell books doesn't mean other animals do.
That's true. But anyway, that's a little one about foxes for you.
Well, my next one is the badger. It's commonly believed today that badger fur is lucky. You know, you hear of people having badger fur and it's meant to bring them luck. But hearing a badger call followed by the hoot of an owl used to symbolise death, or maybe even still does to some people if they're superstitious. If the badger walks across your path behind you, where you've just walked, it's meant to be good luck. But if you see a badger walking across the path in front of you, where you're just about to walk, it's meant to be bad luck. And if it scrapes up earth as it goes, it's meant to be an omen of death.
Wow, that's quite a... Oh, I don't know how a badger would scrape up earth as it goes. Because unless it's digging on the move...
Maybe if it kind of kicks up dirt as it walks, or if it's just sort of stops, scrapes up some earth and keeps going.
So for all you naturalists out there, if you see a badger, turn around really quickly so it passes from behind you.
I'm not sure if it counts. If it's where you're about to go, then I think that would still be a negative omen.
But the badger doesn't know where you're about to go and you do, so you can change that.
Well, I don't think it necessarily means it's intentional when it comes to the badger's behaviour. I don't think the badger's making the omen come true. I think it's like when a black cat crosses your path sort of thing. I think it's more of a coincidence which signifies something positive or something negative.
What if you're crossing their path instead of them crossing yours?
That's definitely negative for them because humans suck.
Yeah. That's what I was saying. Right, on to my next one. So I'm going to do one on beavers. So due to spending so much time in water, the Roman Church once declared that they were fish and therefore could be eaten.
That's just like with otters in a past episode, I think, to do with wildlife myths or perceived pests, I think it was.
I think it was perceived pests.
Yeah, and it said that otters are fish, so you can eat them on days when you're not allowed to eat meat.
And it was the same with the beaver, which I find really weird because does that show like a real lack of actual understanding of the species? Just because it's in water, it has to be a fish.
I think they just oversimplified it massively, and maybe they want an excuse to be able to eat meat.
Oh, that's probably right. And another one, this is good. So, the phrase eager beaver, so you heard of that, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and listeners, you've probably heard of it too. So, this comes from the Canadian beaver. He's well known for being highly active and building lots of dams. And because of his constant state of activity, they call him the eager beaver. And it turns out they believe Canadian beavers create more dams and fell more trees than the Eurasian beaver. So he's eager.
So the Eurasian beavers are non-eager or not so eager beavers?
Not so eager beavers.
Aw, that's a shame.
Well, it's probably a good thing just now with him starting to go back in the wild in the UK again, which is fantastic news. And we need more beavers across the UK. So if you've got some private land and a waterway in it, get in contact with the Beaver Trust and say, I want a beaver. And be a beaver believer.
So my next one is owls. In fact, I just realised I have actually got otters at the end, but that's just a little bit. I'll leave till after the owls. So in ancient Greece, it was believed that owls had night vision because of a magical inner light which they possessed. If an owl flew over Greek soldiers before a battle, they saw that as a good sign and that sign that they would win the battle. A Roman superstition was that witches transformed into owls and they sucked the blood of babies, which is a bit scary. Scary or funny if you're Kevin.
They didn't have fangs. I can imagine an owl sucking.
Well, they do have quite sharp beaks, so that could easily puncture skin.
I would love to see an owl try and suck the blood of anything, let alone a baby.
I mean, can birds suck? Pigeons can suck liquids, but other birds have to use gravity. They have to lift.
So unless they had the baby above their head, and then was going...
Or they got it confused. Pigeons suck the blood of people. Like, pigeons are vampires.
Oh, so pigeons dressed as owls sucking the blood of babies.
Yeah.
Got it. Cracked it.
You learn so much in this podcast. Like, we make so many discoveries.
Yeah, that pigeons dressed as owls to drink the blood of babies.
That's the only explanation.
I bet you would not find us on any other podcast.
No. Not because it's ridiculous, but because no one else is brave enough to say these things. Okay. So English folklore said that during the same period... English folklore said many people believed that the screech or the call of an owl flying past a window of a sick person meant that they would die very, very shortly. And another belief was that if you walked around an owl in a tree, and this is linked to the belief that owls can turn their heads 360 degrees, so if you walked around an owl that was sitting in a tree, it would turn its head to follow you to the point that it would wring its own neck. So it would just keep turning its neck until it basically couldn't breathe or whatever.
Yeah, it's not good.
A 12th century Kentish preacher also had an explanation for why owls are nocturnal, which was that the owl had stolen the rose, which was a prize awarded for beauty, and the other birds had punished it by allowing it to only come out at night. Although obviously the owl, it's many owls that come under the title of the owl. Apparently a lot of the myths were about barn owls because they were, I think, the most commonly known or commonly seen of the owls.
But then that myth doesn't work because you get owls which are out in the daytime.
It's just a generalisation, isn't it? In Ireland, an owl that enters the house must be killed at once because if it flies away, it will take the luck of the house with it. And that reminds me of the episode of Outnumbered we saw the other day when the little girl was saying that pigeons in the house are bad luck, and then the pigeon died and all this superstitious stuff happened.
Ooh.
There was another thing about owls as well, and I was going to put it in here, but then I thought there could be a whole other episode about what I would call ancient healers. And it was that apparently giving an owl egg to someone to eat is meant to cure alcoholism, and I think it said that if you give an owl egg to a child and they eat it, they're never meant to be afflicted by drunkenness, apparently. But I thought that could be an episode on its own if you look at all the things that animals were supposedly able to do for people. And I know that's not really the point of the podcast, but I think Talk Wildlife, it's about all things wildlife related, including human relations with wildlife, because our relationship with wildlife has a massive impact on how wildlife is treated and therefore how each species does. So to talk about beliefs that humans have of wildlife, I think is a big part of it as well. So I think it'll be interesting to talk about things that people used to think animals could be used for when it comes to helping others. And I mean in a sort of strange, mythical sort of way. There was a book I read about ancient medicines and it mentioned some, so I can find some from that as well, but I thought that would be good for another episode. Have you got one more animal to talk about?
I have one more, and it's got a really cool story attached to it. So, the one I'm going to talk about is storks. So, obviously we know storks, for the first time in over 400 years, nested and raised chicks in the UK, which is amazing news. So, leaving the best till last, I reckon. So, storks are an indicator of fortunes. That's Bran, that's not a stork, by the way, it's our jackdaw Shan in the background. He's definitely an indicator of fortunes. And that noise is him indicating he wants his fortunes to improve and get some food. So he
only ate about 20 minutes ago.
Yeah, he's a greedy boy. So, a 19th century North German woman believed after closely observing storks in the spring the following. And now, you can comment after each one, okay? If a stork chattered its bill... Thanks, Bran.
He always knows when to talk at the right time. Like, we'll be watching a programme and someone will say something and he'll almost reply to them. Or something will happen that makes him talking very funny.
So I'll go again, Bran. Thanks for that input. Once again.
Gonna have to feed you soon. We will feed you in about 5-10 minutes, okay?
If a stork chatted its bill, then she would break something. So that woman found out from her observation she would break something.
Okay, my comment on that. Is that only if you're looking at the stork while it does it? Because storks must chatter their bill multiple times a day. Does that mean that every single day you're going to break multiple things? Or is it only if you see the stork while they're doing that?
I don't know. That never says.
I already am not a fan of this belief.
The next one. So do not flighty birds, all I say. If the stork flew, then she would be a bride by the year end.
Again, what does that mean? Storks fly every day, I'm sure.
So surely if you...
So every day she's going to be a bride by the end of the year.
But hang on, so if she witnesses a stork flying numerous times, in one observation, does that indicate she's going to get married, divorced, married, divorced, married, divorced? Or she's going to have loads of multiple marriages?
I think it's just one fact that stays the same. She sees it fly, she's going to get married by the end of the year, whether she sees it once or 10 times. But I just don't understand what that means. Because anyone could see a stork fly.
Maybe we need to find the people from the UK Stork Project.
And ask them if they got married by the end of the year.
Or if they broke something after watching the stork chattering.
But what if your job was to keep an eye on the storks and you just broke everything you owned and then you couldn't look at the storks anymore because your binoculars had broken, your camera had broken, and then the hide urine had broken, and then someone came and married you? What's the last one?
Okay. It gets better. If the stork stood upright, because, you know, storks don't obviously do that very often. They do. She would be asked to be a godmother.
Well, how many godchildren must you have then?
We need to ask the people of the British Stork
She has like
Project
200 godchildren.
how many godchildren they have. Is there any truth behind this? So that's that one. Now this is a really cool legend regarding storks. So the legend has it, in 452, Attila the Hun was laying siege to the Italian town of Aquila, and they were failing to take the town by siege. They couldn't take it, couldn't break the walls down. So Attila rode round the boundaries, the walls of this sieged Italian town, when he saw a stork family leave their nest from within the town and flew over to the nearby marshes. Attila took this as a sign from the storks that he had to breach the wall where the storks flew over. Now the legend has it that Attila then launched all his forces at that very small walled section where the storks flew over. They breached the wall and they won the battle, and with anger and fury they laid ruin to the whole entire town. But reading that, I hope they didn't destroy the place where the stork was living, because if they laid ruin to the town,
grateful of them.
exactly. So it's like the stork flying over that part of the wall, to them was a sign that that's the area they needed to attack.
And they were successful.
Maybe it was right, because the storks would have flown over an area where there was less people, surely, right? So they're flying over a high bit where there's people, and they're going to want to avoid that. So if there wasn't as many people on that part of the wall, maybe that signal that's a good place to go. Yeah,
that makes sense.
Is there any truth in this old Attila the Hun legend? I don't know. That's the last one I have here.
I've only got a little one for otters, but that was interesting.
I like that one. That was a cool story to
We'll
read.
need to do another episode on this, because obviously there are many more species we can talk about. I did think it would be easier to find myths similar to the nightjar one, weird behaviours that they apparently exhibit, but it doesn't matter. It's really interesting anyway, and we can always expand on the same species, because, as I said, every country and era seem to have different ones.
That'd be so cool. I wonder if we could try and find, like, the meaning of a stork for different cultures and different countries.
Ooh, I like that idea.
The same animal but different cultures. Like if we pick like different continents.
But we'd have to come up with different time zones as well, because rats thousands of years ago were maybe seen as positive where they're not now in some countries, and maybe the flip side as well. So we'd probably have to come up with, it can maybe be today and how every animal is perceived today in different countries.
Yeah, that'd be
And then we
interesting.
could pick maybe 1,000 years ago or something, but it would have to be all in the same time period, otherwise it might change.
The trouble is you're trying to find them all in the same time period.
Yeah, we can certainly look into it.
Right, anyway, I'll let you get on with your otter one.
Yes, otter. So they've been seen for a long time as friendly and helpful, and known as water dogs in more than one culture actually. They've often been held in higher esteem than other wild animals, and there's a legend that says that if you eat an otter's head, you'll become forgetful. But don't worry, if for some reason you feel the need to eat an otter's head, there is something you can do to stop you from forgetting where you placed your most prized possessions. All you have to do, it's really simple if you really feel the need to eat an otter's head for some reason, is tie up your important object in bundles and then put those bundles onto your head, and then you can eat the otter's head, and then it means you won't forget where you've placed these items. Probably because they're on your head and they're weighing you down, but I think it's meant to mean that you won't be blighted with forgetfulness if you put your prized possessions on your head.
Okay, but I reckon there's a flaw in this, because there probably is quite a few people who wear glasses and put their glasses on their head
And they
forget their glasses. So if only
but they're not eating otters' heads. Maybe.
You don't know that.
So does that mean that if you have glasses and you put the glasses on your head in a bundle and then you eat otter head, this kind of magic of the otter will actually work in your favour, because it suddenly means you won't forget where you put your glasses anymore?
What if you forgot you ate the otter's head?
Well, I think it's only meant to make you forget where you put things. But that could be in the Animal Healers episode. We can find a way to use the animal's power in your own favour. But I don't want to go around telling people to eat otters' heads.
Yeah,
I
don't eat otters' heads.
But it's interesting, if someone did eat an otter's head, would having your glasses on your head make you suddenly unable to forget where you put your glasses? Because you'd be using the power against Do you know what I mean?
I know
the myth
what you
against
mean.
itself. You put something on your head, then you can't forget where it is because the otter's power doesn't work. Disclaimer, don't do anything we mentioned. Don't eat an otter's head. Don't go up to a panther and ask it to sniff a dragon to death. Or should I say aromatherapize a dragon to death. What else? What else do we put on this mighty disclaimer? Don't kill owls. Don't walk around an owl in a tree to see if it wrings its own neck. You can keep some badger fur if you want, as long as you've just found it and you haven't harmed a badger to get it.
Don't ask a rat to get you out of a sticky situation. Hey, look, I know a lot of people who are in really bad prisons may see rats in the prisons. Maybe they are trying to chew you out of the prison, but probably like they're not going to be chewing you out of prisons.
You can always ask them. You can't really lose anything by
Yeah,
asking them. Although
that's
someone
true.
who watches you might think that you're a bit strange, but that's not really the biggest problem.
True.
Anything else? Anything else we have to make sure people don't do? Don't eat stones.
I don't know if we mentioned about eating stones.
Mentioned. Oh yeah, no, okay. Don't catch a lynx expecting it to provide you with free gravel.
Oh yes,
Because
very
the
much
feeding
so.
costs alone would offset the cost of the gravel anyway, so you may as well just buy the gravel.
And I think the lynx might have something to say about you trying to grab it and.
We don't have to grab the lynx. You just need to wait till this gravel appears. But then that's not ethical anyway, so don't do that. Just buy gravel like normal people do.
If you've heard of a weirder, more crazier, out there disclaimer, do let us know. I don't think they can top this magical, mythical one.
Nah, some disclaimers in American adverts can definitely top that. Right, I think that's it then. Our next episode is going to be how to responsibly feed foxes in your garden. And before I start it, I'm just going to say it's not going to be encouraging people who don't feed foxes to feed foxes, but it's for people who either do feed foxes or are planning on feeding foxes, or anyone just interested in the topic of feeding foxes, to get some ideas about what they really should or shouldn't do, and the best way to do it safely.
Yeah, especially I'll be covering the aspects of what you might not think about whilst feeding foxes, impacts on others is quite a big one that people never really see. But yeah, it's going to be an interesting episode.
Mm-hmm. Bye.
Bye.